Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's program. My name is David Matney with Nebraska Realty out here in Omaha, Nebraska. Tonight, we're going to go over some of the top 10. I don't know if we're going to get 10, but we're going to go over the top stories of 2025. So, look, with that, we'll get things started. Looks like Leslie G is in the house. Merry Christmas from Pflugerville. All right. Well, Merry Christmas to you guys, too. All right. So, thanks for stopping by. I know it's Christmas time. I know everybody's busy. So, hey, I appreciate you guys chiming in. And we have, all right. Hello. All right. We'll dive in to today's topic. We got some good economic news today. Um, the GDP came out for the third quarter and it was at 4.3%. So I guess that's above what it was expected. So the economy is running a little bit better and uh, than they had anticipated. I think the projection was 3.3 and it came in at 4.3. Now that's good in the fact that the economy's firing on all cylinders. It's still one of those things where we got kind of uh, a situation where you got folks on one end of the spectrum doing really well, and then there's still folks out there struggling. So, oh, look at this. We have Angela. All right. That's my wife. So, all right. Well, oh, and of course, she's gonna have you finished your Christmas shopping? She takes care of all the Christmas shopping. So, I will, I will do some. I'll probably do some shopping tomorrow, which I always. Well, I, I don't. I'm not very good at that. So, all right. Well, thanks, Angie, for stopping by on the chat. So, but anyway, the good news about the economy at 4.3, higher than expected, is hey, that's good for the economy, but that also means that when the economy is doing well, that can lead to a little bit of inflation and there's less likelihood of lowering the interest rates. Um, the rates will probably stay elevated. So um, anyway, that's kind of one of those things. So wanted to share that with you, and then we'll go ahead and I had for the first story for 2025. Obviously, was the election of President Trump. And here's the deal: we're talking about politics, so we're trying to keep it on the housing side. But whenever you're talking about politics, 50% of the people are happy and 50% are unhappy. So, but here's the thing: the housing market has um, you know, politics has a big impact on housing policy. So Leslie G says, "All right, diamonds always fit and match with any outfit." Okay, we we might have banned Leslie from the chat. I'm just kidding. That's all. All right, just a small shopping tip. Thank you. Okay, so all right, I'm glad everybody's got a sense of humor tonight. But anyway, with politics wise, and then one of the big stories that I had was the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, which anytime you don't raise taxes and you keep more money in people's pockets, that's a good thing. So if those taxes would have expired, they were set to expire in 2025. If those would expired, then we would have had a tax increase. So that's not good for the economy. And then that was one of the big stories that I had. And then along with that, on the negative side, and it depends on how you look at it. There's two ways of looking at it, and that would be along with that big one big beautiful bill. That means next tax season, there's going to be a lot of folks this spring that are going to be getting a huge tax refund because they passed that bill, in July. So a lot of the folks are going to be getting a giant tax refund in the spring. So that should be a positive sign for the economy as well, and for folks that are thinking about purchasing a home. Now, um, on the bad side, and I'm going to label it as on the bad side. That's my opinion on that. Would be the tariff talk. It's good that more revenue comes into the United States. That's a good thing, and it's good to have some of these jobs. I don't know what the term is. It when they relocate back to the United States. That's a good thing if we can bring those manufacturing jobs back to the United States. But in the interim, when a tariff is imposed, that is a tax that is inflationary, and that causes prices to go up. And it went into Liberation Day. I thought it was April 1st of this year. The day that went into effect, I was talking to a rep from a local builder. He said the day that went into effect, they raised all of their prices $3,000 across the board. So, there's a good thing that revenues raised within, on a tariff side, but it's also inflationary. That does get passed along to the consumer. So that part of it, I don't think is a good thing. But that was another big story. And then the other thing that goes back to kind of the other big thing that was going on was affordability. And it's really hit the mainstream now. We've been talking about that for a long time, but now we're starting to see it hit the more of the press, as far as more and more people are being shut out of the housing market. And we've seen that in terms of sales. Sales were down, but they were actually higher than they were in the previous years. And when you got affordability, a lot of people just focus on home prices, but it's not just prices, it's also the interest rate. That's going to affect affordability. And it's also going to affect affordability in terms of property taxes. When property taxes go up, guess what? Homes become less affordable. And the same thing goes with homeowners insurance. We've seen that was a big story this year because you had the fires in LA. And that kind of was early on this year where it came more to the forefront. Now, locally, homeowners insurance in Nebraska is really high because we got the severe weather that we have in terms of hail, thunderstorms. We just had the tornadoes 2 years ago. Well, guess what? All those claims get paid. That gets passed along. And some of these national companies, it affects everybody. So everybody's premiums goes higher. And we've seen that locally in terms of insurance and things like that. That was a big story. Let's see. Oh, I just lost my chat. Let's see here. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. All right. Along with affordability, this is really interesting in the fact that the average age for the first-time home buyer hit an all-time high of 40 years old. Not the average, but the median age of the first-time home buyer hit an all-time high at 40 years old. And then the other thing I thought that was interesting was that first-time home buyers made up only 21% of the entire market. So there is a giant segment of, there's folks out there, would like to purchase, they're just sidelined. And when things become more affordable, those folks are going to come off the sideline. And that goes back to, every year, I don't know if you guys are like me, but you kind of YouTube junkies where you watch all of the news out there in terms of the housing market crash because prices have went up so much. There is a large segment of the population out there who think home prices are going to crash. And I get it every day in the chat, and I talk to people and they're like, oh my gosh, the market's going to crash. And if you follow some of these YouTubers out there, and they are entertainers, they're not housing analysts. And I'm not claiming to be a housing analyst either, but I'm also in the market in the fact that I see what's going on locally, and I don't see where the even during the crash. And if you've been tuned into the live stream for any period of time, I was selling real estate back in the Great Financial Crisis, and even during the Great Financial Crisis in Omaha, every market is going to be different. But Omaha didn't, have the severe. Now prices didn't go up and people were underwater, but it was nothing like it was today. Is nothing like the Great Financial Crisis. Okay, if you fogged a mirror in 2008, you could get a loan, and they had 100% financing and stated income loans and things like that, where you just stated your income and bam, you got money. And it was kind of odd because it's like, how are these folks paying for this? That has completely changed. Okay, Leslie has a question here, and that is, do you think the median age is increasing because folks delay marriage and children? I think that does play a part of it too. There's fewer folks getting married. Like, I have older sisters, and they were getting married early on in the 80s, in their 20s, and things like that. Now you have folks delaying marriage. You got folks still living at home in their 20s. But I think that does play a part of it. Okay. And if you're living at home, that, but I do think that plays a part of it. I think there's been a shift as far as that goes. And I think it seems like there's fewer folks getting married. Okay. So it wasn't like when my sisters got married, where they get married right at 19 or right out of high school or 21 and that sort of thing. So I do think that's plays a part, because it's going to take two incomes in order to purchase a home in today's world. I think when I was looking at the median income for the first time home buyer was, I believe it was 94,000. Now if that's a single person, that's somebody making a real good income, but especially in Omaha. But that's going to take two decent incomes to earn that amount of money. So I think that does play a big part of it, as far as, and I think people are having fewer children too. So I think that's a big part of it as well. So good question though. In terms of affordability, inflation, that has been a big story, and that's been some of the results with the tariffs. And then you had the fighting between Jerome Powell and Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants the Fed to lower interest rates. Now, when he lowers interest rates, he's talking about the short-term borrowing of the federal funds rate, not mortgage interest rates. They're related, they're correlated, but they're not related. Okay. The mortgage interest rates are tied to the 10-year treasury yield. Okay. And I'll share that on here. Here is the 10-year treasury yield. Okay. And if somebody just puts their money in the 10-year treasury and does nothing, they're earning 4.1%, okay, in a 10-year treasury. Now, in order to incentivize people to take more risk, then a mortgage interest rate is going to have to offer a higher interest rate because there's more risk involved, okay? And there's a thing called the spread, and we've mentioned this in other live streams. But this is the spread between the 30-year mortgage and the 10-year treasury yield. Okay. Back in 2023, when there's more volatility, investors are going to demand a greater amount, a greater yield, or a greater Um, so the difference between the 10-year Treasury and mortgage interest rates back in 2023 was 2.75%. Normally, it's around 1.5%. Well, in 2024, it got a little bit better. And then in 2025, it's even better yet. So that means the 30-year fixed rate mortgage is going down, even though the federal funds rate is not, but it's because the spread has gotten better. So that's a good thing. And then overall this year, you can see starting in June, rates have been starting to head downward. Okay. And then we have another, Leslie says, when I hit the labor market in 1984 after college, a home was about 4 times my income. I made $19,000 and a smaller house was about 85,000. Yeah. And they have talked about that as well, to where I believe it's now 7 times. I have to double check on that, but that's been one of the issues as well. Okay. But you got to remember, in 1984, what was your interest rate? In 1984, let's see here. That was in 1984. We just came out of some. Let me look up the Fred economic data here real quick. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. Let's see, mortgage interest rates. Just to kind of show you. Okay, we'll put this one on here. Okay. Just to give you some idea, this is for the Fred economic data, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage average in the United States going back. This is going back to all the way back to 1971. Okay. In 1984, okay, interest rates were at 14%, 14%. Okay. So even though a home was 4 times your income, your payment was higher, because affordability has to deal with the interest rate and the price of the house. Okay. Imagine how miserable it'd be, how low sales would be if we had 14% interest rates now. Okay. For a long time, these bars that are vertical, these are recessions. Okay. So this was the great financial crisis. Okay. This was in the early 1980s after Reagan got elected. We were trying to crush inflation back then, and they jacked up interest rates, and rates at the time were at 18%. Okay. But after the great financial crisis in 2008, you can see where interest rates went from 5% down to 4%. And for a decade, we had really low interest rates. And then this little blip in 2020, that's the pandemic, then rates went really low. Okay. So we had rates below 3%. Okay. And that's free money. It's almost a crime not to get a mortgage. But, if you had a mortgage, you would refinance it. And then we had, and we had inflation because all of a sudden they printed money. Rates were extremely low. And so what did that do? That overheated the housing market. Excuse me. And then what happened? Prices shot up. Well, then guess what? They raised rates. And then what happened? We went from 3% up to 6%. And then in some cases, we even got, in 2023, well above 7. Okay. And then now rates are coming back down. Now, who knows what rates are going to do? Rates are going to do what they're going to do. But that's just to kind of go back, Leslie, to what you're in 1984, rates were at 14%. So you have to do the math on that. But, I remember I bought my first house in 1991. It was an investment property, and I paid 13% on that. And then when My wife and I bought a home, and we had rates in the 8%. I mean, we thought that was great interest rate. We thought that was great money back then. Um, so it's all relative, and you don't know. I think this is interesting too on this chart. Going back to, um, people think, well, I'm going to wait till rates come back down. Okay. And look back in 1973. Okay. Um, we had 7.5% interest rates. Okay. And then it didn't come back down to 7% until 1990, into the 1990s. So 20 years it was above 7.5%. So who knows what will happen as far as interest rates go. So these folks that says, well, I'm going to wait until rates come back down. Who's to say they're going to come back down? It took 20 years for them to come back down in this frame right here. Now, are we ever going to see 2.5% interest rates again? Absolutely not. That's never going to occur again, in my opinion, ever again. That was artificial. Okay. This was an artificial market. And don't get me wrong, it was good while it was lasted because there were a ton of sales and homes sold quick. And, we had a boatload of sales, but that was an artificial market. Now we're going back to a normal market. And Leslie says, I had friends who really struggled at the time with rates. Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And that was a kind of an era to where people did a lot of, they would remodel their homes. They would add additions. So in the early 1980s, it seemed like the big in thing to do would be to add an addition to your house instead of buying a new one, It also depends how much you're financing. Sometimes a quarter or a half point doesn't really matter much in payment. I think people get hung up on a number. Yeah. I think what the thing to do is, the best time to buy a house was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. If you can afford it, okay? Because people want to be, trying to time the market and all that sort of thing. If you can afford the home and you have some money set aside for a rainy day, just in case you lose your job, and you have a little bit of cushion in there, okay? Because things can happen, okay? And then when you own a home, hey, things break. It's not going to stay that way forever, and even on a brand new home. But if you buy a home and you have a long-term outlook, I think overall you're going to be just fine as far as that goes. So I know there's people that want to, time the market, and you're never. And here's the other thing too: homes sell for market value. Okay, when it's exposed to the marketplace, on Zillow, the MLS, and that's a home is only going to sell for what a buyer is willing to pay for it. Okay, it doesn't matter what you got into it. It doesn't matter what you paid for it. It's only going to sell for what a buyer is willing to pay for it. That's market value. And uh, you know, overall, what is the trend? Okay, but people get hung up on trying to time the market or waiting for prices to come down. And I know somebody who's an investor. I think he's looking for a Goldilocks deal. Well, you're not going to find a Goldilocks deal. You buy a home, you sit on it, you make a little bit of money over time. You're not going to get rich quick. It's getting rich slowly over time. So, but I do agree. I think, people get hung up on a number, but I think if you can buy a home and you can afford it, and this is something that's going on right now in the marketplace and too, and that is people are competing with new construction. Okay. If you're an existing, an existing home, a lot of folks think, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to make that repair, or I don't have to do that. I don't want to paint. I don't want to. Well, guess what? That buyer out there is not just looking at your home. They're looking at a whole bunch of other homes out there, and they're having a lot more to choose from. This is not that pandemic market where you can put anything out there with 4 walls and a roof and you're going to get, 15 offers. this is a more competitive market where you got to do the old fashioned stuff of, like staging the home, making those repairs, and then you're not going to get 15 offers and it's not going to sell for $40,000 over list price. Now, in some places in the Northeast, like in New Jersey, they have no new construction. So guess what? Their market is a lot more competitive, and they're still, but an average house out there is, a shack is $700,000. So the nice thing about the Omaha market is that we have an abundance of new construction. There's a lot of competition out there. So in terms of a buyer, this market back here, when rates were at 2%, 3%, guess what? Buyers weren't happy in that environment, because guess what would happen? You would have a buyer and they would write 7 offers before getting an offer accepted. Okay. Now, so sometimes a buyer wouldn't get their first choice. So buyers back then, even during the pandemic, when rates were really low, there was so much competition. There were people lined up outside the house for an open house and things like that. There was buyers weren't happy then, and then now they're not happy because rates are at 6% and prices are up 50%. So just to kind of give you some idea of, let's show this one here. Let's see. Leslie says it's hard too, because sometimes a buyer thinks they found the home and they'll never move. So they have to get it 100% right. All homes have pros and cons, even new construction. Yes. And that's why it's good as a buyer. You have to go out there and, a lot of buyers will want to shop online, and never actually go out there and see a couple of homes. You need to go out there and get inside a couple of homes and learn the market. The best way to learn the market, it's easy to shop online and everything, but you got to get out here and actually see the homes in person. And then you can get kind of find out what a $350,000 home is versus seeing it online. And here's the other thing too. A lot of people think, well, that home is overpriced. Well, guess what? If there's a buyer out there willing to pay that amount, then that is market value. And then here's the other thing that's interesting, and then in the fact that 21% of the marketplace is only first-time home buyers. Well, guess what? 26% of all buyers last year were cash buyers. So guess what? Cash buyers don't care about interest rate. So, and I think the other thing, I have this other theory about this, and that is, I think a lot of these older buyers are actually maybe parents purchasing a home for their kids. Okay, so I think that's going on too, where the parents are stepping in. The bank of mom and dad are buying the home and buying it for their kids. So I've had a couple of clients do that as well. So I think there's that's great if you have parents that are well off, but if you don't, then you're stuck to the sidelines. So let's take a look here. I'll show this. But that's too. All homes have pros and cons, even new construction. Exactly. There's going to be pros and cons even with new construction. So MH08, I thought we were skipping this week. You know what? I thought about it, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I thought, well, I want to maintain that consistency. So yeah, I apologize. We're here. We're here. But yeah, no, I apologize, MH08. All right. Well, I'm glad to see you on board. So all right, terrific. Let's take a look. And I think going back to affordability, there have been ideas floated out around there, like the idea of a 50-year mortgage. I think that is a terrible idea. Ugh. Um, I don't think that helps make things more affordable. And then there's talk about making mortgages portable. I think that has some merit. I'm not sure how they would work that out, but that might get some of these folks off the sideline. But even when rates go down, more buyers come off. Now, is it ever going to be? I know there's folks out there that are like, well, you know, um, the median priced home should someone making the median household income should be able to buy the median priced home. And some people think that, well, in order for that to happen, that has to, um, prices have to come down. Well, um, that that doesn't make any. I mean, that has no, um, you know, that doesn't have any merit because that you're not. Um, there's a yacht market out there. Okay, and I can't afford a yacht. That doesn't mean yacht prices have to come down. It just means that I'm not in the market to buy a yacht. Okay, so um, let's see here. Property tax hack I learned today they use in Colombia: don't finish the house as they don't increase the property tax until the house is complete. Um, that's a pretty interesting hack. But you need that certificate of occupancy. Okay, so the government's involved. So yeah, that I'm not familiar with Colombia and how they do things back there, but that's an interesting hack. That's a good initiative on that. I don't know if it's necessarily they do need to have, if you get a loan on something, you need to uh, have a certificate of occupancy and that sort of thing. So yeah, and in order to get financing. So um, all right. Okay, good. All right. I like the chat. All right. Awesome. Okay. Just to kind of show you where prices are at. This is year to date, the median closed sales price in Douglas and Sarpy County. This is good. This is where prices for year to date are only up 1.5%. Okay, so prices are starting to, we want to see prices kind of flatten out so wages can catch up, or if interest rates come down. Okay, and then the other thing too we're seeing is, and this is year to date, okay, Douglas and Sarpy County, more homes are available. Okay, um, or we have 14% more inventory, so our market is starting to look more like the pre-pandemic market. All right, which is good. More inventory, more choices. Okay. That's good if you're a buyer. And that also means you can do an inspection now and do your due diligence. So, more inventory. Now, you always hear, headlines or YouTube things where inventory is, and I'm guilty of it too because I'll do thumbnails and things like that, but inventory exploding and things like that. I mean, we're going back to a more normal market. Okay. Closed sales, and this is year to date. And I think this is good too because prices flattened. Okay. Was up barely 1.5%. Okay. But look at our total number of sales. Our sales are up a little bit, but it's still an improvement. When there's always going to be a housing market out there, because when somebody gets married, when somebody gets divorced, when somebody passes away, a life event, guess what? People are going, or they get relocated. So I just spoke with somebody today who's relocating to Omaha. They reached out. So if you are in need of assistance and you're thinking about relocating to Omaha, let me put my little banner up there. Go ahead and reach out. but more sales are occurring. So inventory is going up and more sales are occurring. So that's good. Days on market. Uh, days on market is increasing. Okay, that's a normal, that's going back again to a more normal market. All right. I want to separate this out for closed sales, and I want to separate by construction. Okay. Um, and this is where new construction always kind of monitors itself. Okay. New construction was up 1.4% year to date. Previous sold homes, okay, previously owned, existing homes was up 4.9%. So the vast majority, new construction is only a small portion of the total market. I know there's YouTubers out there that talk about, oh my gosh, all of these new construction homes. Builders are smart. Builders are in it to make money. Okay, they're not going to build a home unless they have a buyer for that home. Okay, they don't want to, because if a home is sitting vacant, that's why they have model homes, is because they don't want to just build a whole bunch of homes willy-nilly and not have buyers for them. Now, a lot of builders are really smart in the fact that some builders, like some big national builders, they can already know, okay, this is the amount of homes we're going to sell, so we can get these houses started, and then the client can pick colors, or they're not, depends on what, who the builder is. Maybe they'll be able to pick colors, or they'll be able to say, hey, I want that Hamilton model or Newville model or something like that. If it's a D.R. Horton type home or something like that, they'll know already, hey, we sell about this many homes. But I want to show this in terms of line, and we'll go back out. Let's see here. Okay, this is existing homes in red and new construction in green. Do you see how new construction is just a portion of the market? The vast majority of sales are existing homes. And then you can also see an ebb and flow to this, where in January, there's fewer sales of existing homes. Well, in January in 2024, okay, only it bottoms out. Same thing goes in January of 2023. Sales bottom out in January because the last 2 months of December, everybody's kind of checked out. So December is a really small month in terms of the market. And then what you'll see is in the summertime, in May and June, sales will peak. Okay, because people want to move when the kids are out of school. So, but you can see in terms of the proportion of new construction versus existing, very few homes are, and it's going to remain constant all year long. New construction will make money all year long. If they can close a sale, they're going to do so. But it remains, what I'm trying to say is new construction remains relatively constant. Okay, so anyway, there's with that. And then closed price. Okay, this is this is the median new construction. The median closed sales price was $427 versus for existing was 4.3. So existing was actually, new construction actually went down a little bit this year. Okay, versus the existing market was up 4.3% because the builders are going to adjust the market rate place. As interest rates increase and homes becomes more unaffordable, then builders will say, hey, let's build a little bit smaller model. So there will be a little bit of a retraction there. Does that make sense? So anyway, Okay. Locally, another big news event, and this is, we had our election of a new mayor, okay, John Ewing. And then we also had the law that went into effect. This was a big real estate story, and that is, it used to be as a member of the National Association of Realtors back in August of 2024, you had to enter into a buyer broker agreement. Well, that became a law July 1st of 2025. So now it's actually a state law in the state of Nebraska. Before you can see a home, you have to enter into a buyer broker agreement with your agent before you can even tour. Okay. And that's going to stipulate how long the contract is for and then what is the compensation. So the way it used to be, okay, before this big settlement, it used to be where if I had a listing, I would put it out on the MLS and then I would advertise and I would say, hey, we're paying all buyers. Commissions aren't negotiable. There's no such thing as a standard commission. I would say, hey, we're paying all the buyer agents 2.5%. Okay. Well, they had a big class action lawsuit, and they said, well, hey, they determined, in the settlement was they found it was a class action lawsuit. They found the National Association of Realtors guilty and of price fixing, and they settled for like $418 million. Okay. And then they made the rules change to where now you can't advertise on the MLS. If I have a listing, I can't advertise that we're paying 2.5% to all buyer's agents. Okay. Now what has to happen if a buyer agent is going to show that property, they have to enter into that agreement. Okay. And compensate their buyer's agent. Now, what the buyer agent can do is they can, in the contract, write up the offer and then say, hey, we would like the seller to to pay the buyer agent commission. So what they're trying to do is uncouple the commissions. Okay. But that is now a state law. I was just out with a buyer yesterday, and before we seen the house, we had to sign that buyer broker agreement. Now, I do think you should read that agreement, okay, and then because it's going to stipulate what the compensation is and how long the agreement is. But that is a legally binding contract, and then if let's say you were to go to that's a contract. So Leslie has a question here. Do you think agents do a buyer agreement for only one day to look at a specific house? I'm thinking of folks who move to a new area and they just met the agent. Yes, you can do that. You can make it just for one particular house, kind of give that agent kind of a test drive, or you can have it be for an exclusive, a certain amount of time. Okay. But yeah, certainly, I had only had one person flat out refuse to sign one. And I'm like, well, hey, best of luck to you. But I've only had one person refuse to sign, and I'm like, well, okay, hey, I got the day off. So, but I think that's because there's going to be a certain fit. There's not every agent's going to work out with everybody. There's that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, because you don't want to go into contract with somebody, and then I find out like, hey, I don't really like this person. So you should also ask about, hey, what can we do if I'm not happy? So, okay. MH08 says, if I sign an agreement with an Omaha agent, then use an agent in Iowa. Well, that would be if I'm only licensed in Nebraska, so I can't sell in Iowa. But you'd have to, if that was the case, then it would be for Nebraska. The way I understand it, it would only be for Nebraska. Like if you signed with me, MHOA, that would be for Nebraska. And if you were using an Iowa agent, then you'd contract with somebody in Iowa for an Iowa home. I think there would be two separate there. But there's some agents that practice both sides of the river. I don't do that. Now what I can do is I can refer you to an agent. Okay, so and that's gonna be another lawsuit around the corner, in the fact that if, let's say, MHOA, you're gonna buy a home in Iowa and you needed a referral, okay, I can refer you to an agent in Iowa and get a referral fee from that agent's broker. Okay. And that's going to be another lawsuit. And stand by, because there's going to be some disclosure there, because a lot of times the consumer is not aware that there's these referral, because there's a lot of agents that do a ton of business just on referral fees. They have a lot of them here on YouTube. They'll have a great big channel, and they will do videos and refer agents to other agents across the country. And so my channel is geared toward living in Omaha, people relocating to Omaha. But if I had a national channel, then if somebody needed an agent in, let's say, Colorado, then I could refer you to an agent in Colorado. I can still do referrals, but there's going to be more disclosure with that coming, because a lot of people aren't aware of that there's these referral fees going back and forth. So I think that's going to be something that's now a lot of agents that are on YouTube will tell you, hey, yeah, I do get a referral fee for that. So, okay, Chels 904 says, what's the average percent a buyer agent gets in Omaha? That's a great question. Now, here's the thing. There's no such thing as a standard commission. Commissions are all negotiable. So when you contract with that agent will have on the buyer broker agreement, hey, my percentage is X, or it's a flat fee of, $7,000 or whatever the case may be. So there's no, and that was part of that result of that lawsuit with the settlement with that class action lawsuit, because they were saying, well, hey, if there's a standard, if all the buyer's agents are getting a certain amount, then that's price fixing. So, but yeah, it's going to vary from agent to agent. Now, and here's the other thing too. Let's say it's negotiable. Okay. So let's say Chels 904, let's say you're writing a contract and you put on that contract that you want your buyer agent to be compensated 5%. Okay. That my seller could certainly counter that as well. So it's all negotiable. Okay. I better make a move before that lawsuit happens. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing too. Everybody was all, I was certainly like, oh, I wasn't looking forward to that buyer broker agreement. I thought, oh, this is going to be, because they had them before. Okay. Because I thought, oh my gosh, people aren't going to want to sign this thing. People sign it, and they don't read it. So you got to be careful about that. Okay. So, and then ask questions about it, or there's nothing wrong with asking of a copy of it up front. Okay. But if you're looking at, the last thing you want to do is be looking online and then go, oh my gosh, I fall in love with this house and I got to see it today. And you haven't, you want to vet your agent a little bit, or do a little research on your agent. A lot of agents, a lot of buyers vet me by watching the channel. So if they don't like me, they don't call me. So, but they get kind of feel for how the way I am by based on the channel, and then um, but I'm surprised at how people just. I thought there would be a lot more pushback with it, but I like it. I mean, like I said, I've only had one person give me any pushback on it, and I was like, I was fine with that because it's like, well, that's now. Here's the deal, too. I mean, um, you know, this is what you got to be careful about, and that is if you're a buyer and you're under contract with somebody and you walk into new construction, you better make sure your agent is with you on that first visit to new construction because um, you could still be on the hook for that commission, and then the new construction folks aren't going to compensate that agent, so that can be kind of tricky with that. So you got to be careful about that. And I get it. People, a lot of times people don't understand how all this works. So um, I'm in it every day. So I think of this buyer broker agreement. I'm like, of course, everybody knows all about this. And they have no clue about it. But it's starting to get out there. But, you know, uh, what's kind of funny is they kind of thought, well, this will put downward pressure on commissions. And from what I have seen, that hasn't been the case. So the attorney that was behind all of this didn't quite get what he quite wanted on. I mean, he got quite what he wanted. He got a ton of money on it, but um, what's nice about it is it's like, hey, here's the commission. Here's how long we're working with each other, and this is the compensation. And you define your client. Like, hey, if the person doesn't want to sign it, before then, back in the day, before all of this, it was just kind of like you kind of like hoped they stayed loyal. But now it's, you're under contract. MH08 says you're one of the 5 on YouTube I try. Thank you, MH08. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. So that's I got a kind of a feeling of the other 5. I think I know who the other 4 are. So I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. So all right. Let's see. Kind of going back into our. Let's see. Can you have a variable commission depending on the price of the home? Everything's negotiable. So absolutely. So the commission is actually between the client and the broker. Okay. But yeah, there can be a variable commission based on depending on the price of the home. Sure. That's now, do a lot of people do that? I mean, depends on the price of the home, but yeah, I mean, you can anything's it's negotiable. So now most folks will have a policy in place. Here's the other thing too: when you're a real estate agent, you're an independent contractor. I wake up every day unemployed. I go to work. I don't get an hourly pay or anything like that. That is, I only get paid if I sell something and it closes. So if you do a whole bunch of work with somebody and they don't buy, you're just, you're not getting anything for that. So let's see. Leslie says, do you run across people who ask to pay the commission by the hour? I've never heard of any. I've never heard of anybody doing that. I mean, sometimes I would wonder. I mean, because here's what's odd is you'll have one client that will go under contract right away, and then you might have another contractor where you might spend weeks and weeks and weeks working with each other, and you know, and then something happens. "Oh, I changed my mind. I don't want to buy. Or, whatever. Then you're just the people that do real estate tech, um, it's 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 I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun for me. I enjoy making these videos and things like that. It's fun for me. Um, I en- I enjoy it. Now don't get me wrong. There's times where it's like I don't enjoy it sometimes. Um, but yeah, sometimes you put a lot of hours in, and a lot of times there's no um, compensation by that. And then there's times where you get compensated really well. So you can have a real good year and it's amazing, but you can have months where you don't make a dime. But I think what's important is you got to plan for that. There's times of the year where you're going to have um, you know a little inside baseball here, and that is I have myself set on a salary, okay, where I pay myself a certain amount every month, and I keep an extra in my. I have an accountant that does all this, and she just pays me a set salary every month, and then that way there's not the ups and downs or anything like that. And if I get if I do really have a good year, then it's like, hey, you might have a little bit of a bonus at the end of the year. Um, but yeah, I don't. Um, but you're in charge of all your own expenses, so you know, um, it's it might yeah, it's I have a lot of fun doing it though. So let's see. MHOA says I was an independent contractor for over 30 years, so I know that feeling. Yep, exactly. So um, I cringe when I see flat fee agents, sort of like those discount brokers. And here's the thing, though: commissions are just negotiables. How do you discount something that's 100% negotiable? So there's all different models out there. So there's a hat for different heads. So um, you know, and then here's the other thing too, in terms of discounts and stuff like that. Somebody can um, you know discount something, but people don't want discount service. So um, but there's all sorts of different models out there and all that. So people, it's like I said, it's you know uh, and, you're work with different, just like people with different price ranges. You might have somebody that at a certain at a lower price point, you're going to make far less money than you will somebody who's buying a $500,000 home. But sometimes it might be more work putting together a $200,000 deal than it is a $500,000 deal. So, um, but yeah, I think what you got to do is look at what, uh, you know, um, sometimes, yeah, yeah, but yeah, that's all good. You know what I mean? So but there's all different models and everything like that. So, um, yeah, you know, but yeah. Um, the other, I was going to say the other, major story that kind of an impact on the real estate side would be the government shutdown. So we still don't have the unemployment numbers. I'm waiting for those to come out locally for where are we at locally in terms of the unemployment rate. Um, and then, you know, and this is going across, nationally again, the return to a more normal market. Now here's the other thing too. Real estate is like the weather. Every location is different. Um, uh, Clark, the realtor, Devon Clark, out of Atlanta, Georgia. Now his market is taking a little bit of a hit right now, and you got Jackie Baker in New Jersey. Her market is, still very competitive. So every market's going to be different. What's nice about Nebraska is our market's very steady. We got a lot of growth going on, and we got the airport being redone. We got the new skyscraper being built. You got the Heartland Preserve going on. There's a lot of cranes in the city. And when there's growth and when there's things going vertical, and we just passed this year nationally. I mean, Omaha-wise, just passed over, just in population, the Omaha metro is now over 1 million people. So there's a lot of people relocating to Omaha. So I think there's some exciting things going on in the city now. And I'm, you know, our roads. I mean, everybody's going to complain about the weather, and then the roads. And there's that one gentleman that the road construction comic now that drives around and goes on Instagram or whatever, who does the road construction comic and things like that. But we got some serious road construction going on. But and everybody complains about the potholes and everything like that. We got a new mayor, but is he going to fix the potholes? No. I mean, nobody's going to be able to fix those just because that's the way it's built. But we got some exciting things going on in locally. Let's see. We talked about the broker agreements, mortgage rates, inventory. Inventory rose, but prices didn't collapse. Affordability. We talked about that. Any other questions in the chat? Any other questions before we call it a night? All right. And then I-80 is a beautiful thing through Omaha. If you drive through Nebraska and all you see is I-80, that is not a good representation of Nebraska. Now, we do have some beautiful sunsets and that sort of thing, but it looks really flat and boring. But there's different parts of Nebraska that are really beautiful. And I think I know this, and that is from working with people that are relocating to Omaha. I really appreciate Omaha a lot more after hearing about what some of these other cities are going through and what we offer. It's really kind of fun and makes me really appreciate all of the things we have going for us. So that part I really appreciate. So and I appreciate all you guys hang out in the chat and supporting my business and that sort of thing. It's imagine if I didn't have a chat. Oh, you guys are wonderful. So Leslie G says thank you for the year-end recap. You are welcome, and I want everybody to have a Merry Christmas and enjoy the holiday. And let's see, next week is the 30th. So we'll go live next week because I'm trying to maintain consistency. I don't know what we'll cover, but we'll cover something. But I appreciate everybody stopping in tonight, and I want you guys to have a Merry Christmas and have a happy holiday. And MH08 says, I regularly drove from Denver to Chicago. Remember those years I-80 was under construction? Yep. Exactly. So MH08, it's always good to see you. Leslie, thank you so much. Great questions, and have a happy new year. And we'll see each other before the new year, but we'll catch each other next week. Enjoy the next couple of days, and you make it a great day. Bye-bye.